Hello, friends. Now, we're so used to hearing stories and accounts of people who go missing in the wilderness, somewhere in the world, and they're never seen or heard from again. It's almost like it's a common occurrence because, basically, it is now. This happens so much, and many people don't even realize what's going on. How is this possible? Maybe it's because of the lack of the reporting, whether by authorities in charge, the news media, or perhaps even government entities who are trying to figure out what's going on behind the scenes so as not to cause a global panic. Whatever the reason, it seems we in this community are still consumed by these occurrences. We've been bringing to your attention these cases and so much more, and will always continue to do so. Today, though, we have one of our less common occurrences. We'll be talking about a case of a man, his daughter, and their dog who were missing but then rescued alive. Needless to say, it's always a great day when we can bring you a story like this, as it happens far less often than when someone goes missing and never comes back or is found, unfortunately, deceased. So here it is. A Canby man and his family rescued after being lost for a harrowing 48 hours in the wilderness. 37-year-old Peter William Monroe, his 7-year-old daughter Layla, and their dog Buck were hiking in Oregon's Mount Hood National Forest, and were going to make a family trip of it. Peter's wife, Camille, was planning on joining her husband and daughter on this trip the day after they left. Camille said she'd arrived at the family's Kenzel Lake campsite to join them on a camping trip, but when she got there, they were nowhere to be found. She assumed they had gone on a hike, but when they never returned, she set off the next morning to search for them. Camille had no luck and called police after she found Peter's truck at the Devil's Peak trailhead, with his keys and Layla's stuffed animal still inside. I just want to point out here that, once again, the name Devil is involved with a place where people have gone missing in the wilderness. It was around 2:30 in the afternoon on Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020, when Camille Monroe called 911 from the Devil's Peak trailhead to report that her husband Peter, their daughter Layla, and their dog Buck had been missing for at least 24 hours. Clackamas County Sheriff's Office search and rescue coordinators activated a rescue mission immediately that same afternoon. The search area featured challenging terrain, and the mission would soon involve volunteers from the CCSO SAR Trail Running Rescue Team, search canines, rope teams, and ground teams. This included support from Pacific Northwest Search and Rescue, Arms Reach and Treat Team, Mountain Wave Emergency Communications, Portland Mountain Rescue, Oregon Office of Emergency Management, 304th Rescue Squadron, 125th Special Tactics Squadron, a Special Forces Unit of the 142nd Fighter Wing of the United States Air National Guard, and the Hood River Sheriff's Office Air Unit. Over 50 searchers ended up participating in the mission. Most of these volunteers sprung into action immediately upon being called and were eager and willing to help out in any way they could. Searchers worked through the night with additional resources from the 304th Rescue Squadron and the 125th Special Tactics Squadron, deploying to the field at about 2 o'clock in the morning to assist the tired crews who had worked through the night. At approximately 6 a.m. on Thursday, September 3rd, searchers from the 304th Rescue Squadron were able to make voice contact with Peter. It took at least another hour for them to reach the trio, though, due to the harsh and difficult terrain. Peter, Layla, and Buck were found northwest of the Kenzel Lake trailhead in a ravine that was located about 1.25 miles and approximately 1,200 feet below where they had first set out for their hike on Tuesday. Peter was injured and unable to walk. Layla and Buck were in good spirits but needed assistance. Crews quickly began to assess and provide first aid. They learned Peter had become lost and had been moving downhill to where he thought a trail was located, injuring himself in the process. After stabilizing Peter, crews began the exhausting process of carrying him out of this remote location through the difficult terrain. They reached a waiting medical crew on Still Creek Road, about 7 miles from Highway 26, near Rhododendron, at about 12:30 in the afternoon on Thursday, September 3rd. Peter, Layla, and Buck were lost and stuck in the wilderness for over 48 hours without supplies. This means no water and no food. It's an absolute miracle they survived relatively unharmed. Peter was transported to an area hospital for his injuries. Buck and Layla were reunited with the rest of the family and were getting some much-needed rest. After his rescue and hospitalization, Peter spoke to reporters from the back of an ambulance and made this statement. "I just want to thank all the first responders and everybody else that helped get me out of that hole. I don't think I would have made it out, especially without any other adults, so I owe you guys my life. Thank you." Search crews want to offer special thanks to a nearby construction crew working on the Still Creek Bridge repair project. The construction crew sped up the rescue operation by using a crane to hoist the Special Forces vehicles over the river. Authorities mentioned that without this help, it would have taken an estimated additional 4 hours to take the longer route to reach the location. This was definitely a dramatic and dangerous rescue operation, and the crews and volunteers who participated are true heroes. We're glad to report that Peter, Layla, and even Buck are all fine and have suffered no long-term injuries or lasting effects from this terrifying ordeal they endured when out for a simple family hike. It just goes to show you, please be careful out there. Whether alone or with a group or even with your pet, no one is immune to the rough and tumble ways of Mother Nature. Always be prepared. Peter and his family were extremely lucky to have survived and been rescued. Next up, we bring you the story of a mother and son who became lost in the Colorado wilderness. Now, it's never a fun time when you're lost in the wilderness. Doesn't matter what age you are, the unknown and mysterious depths of the woods, even the most well-traveled and scenic tourist spots can become deadly and your situation desperate really fast if you don't know where you are once you're off the main trails and clearly marked paths. If you don't know where you are, then how can you possibly know where it is you are going? Once this realization sets in, it must be very hard to suppress the rising fear and panic that surely sets in the moment you think to yourself, I'm lost out here. Will anyone be able to find me? Usually in these areas, where we go to camp and hike, cell phone service is completely unreliable and spotty even on the best of days. Now imagine all this and add to it being lost with one of your children. This is exactly what happened to a mother in Colorado and her 14-year-old son when they decided to go for a day hike and spend some time together on Thursday, August 5th, 2021. It was a typical day for the pair, spending some time together in the great outdoors, taking in the beautiful scenery and clean, fresh air. Just trying to get in some outdoor activities and exercise opportunities before summer ends and the autumn chill hits the air. The pair had somehow gotten turned around and lost and ended up having to spend the entire night in the freezing cold, extremely dark, and predator-infested woodlands of the backcountry of the Flat Tops Wilderness area between Trappers Lake and the Stillwater Reservoir. The Stillwater Reservoir is a scenic alpine lake located southwest of Yampa, Colorado. The reservoir rests at 10,259 feet in northeast Garfield County. It offers excellent opportunities for fishing, hiking, and camping in the surrounding White River and Route National Forest. The as-yet unnamed mother and son were reported missing by the woman's husband and the young kid's father when they failed to return home by 11 p.m. that same night. The Garfield County Sheriff's Emergency Operations Division took the report and immediately began a full search and rescue operation to try and locate the pair before it was too late. The husband went out himself to go and find his wife and son and met some people known only as two Good Samaritans along the way. The three continued out together on foot to try and locate the man's missing family. Garfield County Search and Rescue sent out an alert shortly after midnight for all available members to meet at the operations barn in Rifle at 5 a.m. Friday, which was the following morning. The two had been missing nearly 24 hours at this point, and the search was fast becoming desperate. Cell service in the area is very limited. However, they were able to receive a ping from one cell phone to assist in finding approximate location coordinates of the hikers, the press release stated. Garfield County Sheriff's Office, along with Garfield County Search and Rescue, coordinated their rescue efforts with the Routt County Sheriff's Office and their search and rescue team to begin at dawn. Garfield County S&R deployed at Trappers Lake, with Routt County beginning a ground search farther east from Stillwater Reservoir. A care flight was requested to join in the search with their helicopters to provide any necessary medical support and transport when the hikers were located, the release further stated. It took just about an hour and a half, but eventually, at around 7:30 a.m. that same Friday morning, it was reported by the father that he and the Good Samaritans had a visual on the missing duo. The mother was extremely dehydrated and quite hypothermic, but would make a full recovery. Luckily, the 14-year-old son had no injuries and was able to walk out to the Stillwater Reservoir with his father and one of the other Samaritans completely unharmed. The other Good Samaritan, who was helping the father in his desperate search, twisted and injured his knee. He was taken by ground transport with the unnamed mother to a hospital, which was about a 2-hour drive away. As we said, the mom was hypothermic and dehydrated, but would go on to make a full recovery. All parties would be safely reunited at Stillwater Reservoir, the release stated. This was another successful mission of the volunteers of Garfield Search and Rescue. These volunteers are called upon regularly to assist in various rescues from water to climbing accidents. They assist in the rescue of lost or injured hikers, travelers, or other outdoor enthusiasts in the backcountry. Luckily, this story has a happy ending where all parties involved, including those who were initially injured, made full recoveries and made it home safely. All too often, though, this is not the case, and the decisive action of the husband and swift measures taken by the search and rescue crews in Garfield County, Colorado, definitely contributed to this idyllic outcome. Please, no matter if it's a day hike or a family camping trip, be sure and carry a personal locator beacon. Always pack extra clothes, food, and water in case the unthinkable happens. All too often, the outcome of these day hikes gone wrong aren't as fortunate, and people can even end up losing their lives. Next up, 24-year-old Gina Allen and 28-year-old Brandon Day, both from Dallas, Texas, were in California for a financial convention, and they decided to go for a day hike together on some trails just west of Palm Springs. The pair ended up lost when they wandered off the trails and ended up not being able to find their way out. This is when their simple hike turned into a life-or-death ordeal, and the thing that saved them is what makes this story not only very special, but also quite bizarre, to say the least. When the couple first realized they were lost, Brandon said he wasn't too worried because at that point he could still hear voices, so he assumed there were people around, most likely on the trails they were trying so hard to find their way back to. He said he kept thinking the trail would be right around this boulder. However, the trail never materialized, and the couple knew they had to do something. Night was closing in on them, and they had not come prepared for more than a simple day hike to take in the sights. They didn't even bring their cell phones, let alone food or spare clothing. They were only wearing light jackets, and they were completely helpless and at the mercy of the woods. They went into a cave and spent the night freezing and scared, starving and terrified of what may come and find them when they closed their eyes to sleep. If sleep would come, they were so cold and afraid. The next morning, they decided to do something they had learned somewhere at some time and that they had somehow been able to retain. They started following a boulder-strewn path downhill, struggling to stay with the stream running downhill right with them. That night, they were frequently awakened, but not by the animals they so feared, but by their own shivering. Brandon stated, "The mantra for the day was, 'We're going to get out of here. We're not going to die. It's not our time.'" By the third day, Gina Allen was very weak and didn't even know how much longer she could continue on like this. She said she couldn't stop thinking the worst and that she was praying a lot. Eventually, they discovered a campsite. It was in a dead-end gorge, but they decided to look and see if there was anyone around. They found a foam sleeping mat, razors, a poncho which was thrown into some branches so they could make some shade if they needed to, a spoon, a pair of tennis shoes, and a backpack. They were relieved and elated, thinking for sure whoever owned this gear would be able to show them to safety. However, that elation turned to fear when they realized this campsite was deserted. Among the many items were a corroded flashlight and a broken radio. They soon discovered that the gear was all soaking wet. Nobody was going to help them. They searched through the gear for more supplies and came up with an identification belonging to a 60-year-old retired social worker from Virginia named John Donovan. The couple found a journal of sorts written on some sketch paper and the backs of maps and realized that John Donovan himself had been lost, as he wrote these little notes He was a man who had lost all hope of ever getting out of the woods or being rescued, at least not while alive. In John's backpack, Gina and Brandon found a warm sweater. She immediately put it on to keep warm and stop shivering. He was able to put on some dry socks found in the pack to help him warm up, and they even found dry matches to be able to start a fire. They tried with a small fire to signal a nearby helicopter, but nobody seemed to have seen the signal, and they were still completely stranded. But, at least for now, thanks to John Donovan, they had hope for survival in the few supplies he had left behind. Brandon Day said of the journal, his last journal entry was 1 year to the day we found it, which was eerie. Nobody knew where he was. Nobody knew to come looking for him. So he was preparing for the end. We were looking at the words of a man who was passing. The couple later learned a little more about the man who had inadvertently and unintentionally saved their lives. John Donovan was an experienced hiker who was following the 2,650-mile Pacific Crest Trail, which goes from Southern California right up to the Canadian border. On May 2, 2005, when he vanished, the conditions were very icy, and he must have lost his way or become too injured to keep going. The next day, they came to a large culvert, which was completely covered with dried leaves, vines, and other type of foliage. With the strike of just one more of those matches they found in John Donovan's backpack, they were able to light up an entire acre or two of forest, create a huge smoke signal, and finally get the attention of a helicopter crew who rescued them. Miraculously, when they were taken to the nearest hospital, they had only sustained minor bruises and some blisters. Brandon Day stated, "We feel great. We're thankful. We feel like we've been given a second chance." Was it coincidence, fate, synchronicity, destiny, that they found his supplies 1 year to the day that he had written his last journal entry? We may never know. But it's always good when we get to see something wonderful like hope and the gift of getting to continue living, coming out of something so tragic as a very experienced hiker losing his way and never being seen again. John Donovan's remains were eventually discovered by a 20-foot waterfall in a pool amid birches and mossy green rocks in May of 2006. Well, friends, there you have it. What do you think of these amazing true tales of survival? It is refreshing to be able to have an episode of people that made it out alive. So be safe out there in the woods. Live to tell the tale. Thanks for listening. I look forward to your comments, but please keep it friendly. In the meanwhile, be good to yourselves and each other. I'll see you just a little farther on down the trail. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time.